Good morning and welcome to another lesson in beginning drawing. Now today we're going to be continuing our work with simple shapes, but we're going to be using the alphabet today. So we're going to be doing a kind of calligraphy that is embellished. And so they've done manuscripts for a long time, long before the printing press. And so some of the work that the monks used to do, absolutely beautiful. Now we're not going to get into gold leafing or anything like that. Okay, here we have an example of what we're going to do today. We have two letters that we're going to embellish. One is an S, that's the one we're going to start with, and the other one is a Q. And so the example is in black and white, but you'll see once you get into the tape that you'll see the colors that I'm going to use. But basically, you can use whatever colors you want. So at least if you've got an example of what we're going to do, you can do that first, or you can wait and you can see the drawing, draw along with me, whatever you feel comfortable doing. But this way you have an example of what this lesson is going to be about. So now there are so many ways that you can embellish these letters, but this is just going to be one example. Okay, so we're going to begin right here. And we're going to start with the top of what would be the letter S. And I've already obviously done the light work, which you can't see, and I can hardly see, to be honest with you. But so to begin with, the letter S looks just like an S, and the only difference from what we're going to be doing is we're going to fatten it up so that we can do a few things with it. So there's the first part. And I know that on the last lesson my big fat head was in the way, and I think we might have figured that out. So we shrunk my head. Okay. If it were only that easy. Okay, so now we're fattening up the S. And we're making it kind of a little fancy on the ends here. Okay, and then in here, as you'll see later, we have a little kind of embellishment. And then here, now here, in this particular case, they've used a strawberry as part of their embellishment. And it's an S, so that could stand for the word strawberry, or who knows what they actually want. It's up to the person. Remember, artistic license? Well, you're the artist, and so whatever you want to do to embellish your work. So here we have a leaf, and just a little. There are just so many things that you can do, and this is just one tiny example. So we just about have this part of it, and I've got some leaves down here. And then we have a leaf over here. Now I chose this particular, or actually I'm going to be doing two. I'm going to be doing this one and another one, but I chose them because they're very simple, and for our beginning drawing class I wanted something that's not too complicated, so that whoever wanted to do it, doesn't matter what level of skill that you have. So basically, after this one piece right here, then we can start thinking about what kind of colors we want to use. Okay, that can go there. So the other thing is, when you erase, number one, you want the ink to be dry, and this particular micron pen has a very high quality ink, and so far I haven't had a problem with it having to dry for a long time. So I know some of the cheaper inks, you might have to wait a longer period of time. And the only thing is, when you put your colored pencil to the work, you want to make sure that you've got most of your pencil marks out of the way, otherwise your pencil marks will show up. Now the other thing, so we're going to use some color here, and one of the things that you want to think about is what colors go together. So if you're looking at the color wheel, you've got yellow, red, and blue, okay? And so in this case, I'm going to use pink for the S itself. And when you think about colors, you want to think about what colors actually go together. So when you're looking at the color wheel, if you have red and yellow on one side, you get an orange, and I was going to use orange, but I changed my mind. And so the complement, if you're looking at the color wheel, if you have orange on one side, what you're left with, the primary color, is blue. And so in this case, I'm using a pink, but as you well know, pink and blue go together very nicely. So the reason I bring up the color wheel is, when you're doing things like this, you want colors that go together, because it's why they call it complementary colors, because the colors complement each other. And it makes your work look more professional and easier to digest. It's easier on the eyes when you see things that, even if you don't understand why that looks good, those colors together, it doesn't matter. The important thing is that it does. So now, if I recall, when we get to class, we have some materials, do we not, that we'll be using. We've got some, I think there were like easels, if I recall, that had paints and different things in there. So if you have your own materials that you would prefer to use, then you can bring those. And hopefully that won't be too far in the future, but as we look at, as we're moving into phase 2 here in Pierce County, but we also know that as senior citizens, we're going to be the last ones to be able to get together. So, but hopefully that won't be too far in the future. So I'm putting a light blue in here. Okay, and then I've got a nice green to go for the leaves. A nice dark green. Now you might prefer a light green, that's okay. Artistic license. You have the license to do whatever you want. And people may say one thing or another and you don't have to listen to them. Because this is your work. You can suggest that they do their own. You don't like this? Hey, you do it your way, okay? This is the way I'm doing it. Okay, so we've got these 3 down here, and then we can go to the strawberry. Oh wait, I also want to get, I've got a stem up here. I want to make sure we get that in there. You know, I really like the contrast between the black ink and the colors. I know I've mentioned that before, but it just, especially in the context of what we're doing, some things are harder to see, and I'm really glad that the way that these lessons are going with the black ink outlining the drawing just really brings it together very nicely. So, okay, and then finally, these little guys, just add a little color here. But as you can see, I mean, circles up here, little simple shapes, and the S is not very complicated, and the leaves are not very complicated, so you should be able to, whatever level you're on, you should be able to make an effort to be able to put yourself a nice, so there you are basically. And so now I want to move over to the next letter, which is the letter O, which is here again, doesn't get much simpler than that. So we're going to start up here, and again we're going to fatten it up. And so remember in the very beginning I had you draw lines in all kinds of directions? Well, there's a reason for that, and what I'm doing right here is I'm having to go in a different direction because it's hard to see and at the same time not be in your way. So as we finish up the O here, okay, it's going to be fat in some places and it's going to be thin in other places. That just makes it more interesting. And then we've got this little guy here. So I'm stopping so that I don't cross where I don't want any unnecessary lines. So as we continue to fatten up the O here, okay. And the real challenge sometimes is with pen and ink, as soon as you put the pen on the paper, there's your line, whether you like it or not. That's where it is. There's no erasing that I know of, but then I don't know everything. So if you know of something, please let me know. Now there are just so many different ways of doing this. I chose this one in part because it's not too difficult to begin with, and it's something that hopefully everyone can at least try. And at the same time, if you're so inclined, you know, feel free to do your own thing. If you don't want to do it this way, that's okay. It is definitely okay. So we got a little crown there. And we got a few leaves here. Whatever can add a little color to it just makes it a little more interesting. And we have these down here. And now I want to make it so we're going to add, like we did with the other one, we're going to add a little color inside here. And that would be up to you, whether you do that or not, or whether you do it the way I'm going to do it. Doesn't really matter. This is just an example of what is possible. Okay, and finally, well, now that stores are beginning to open, hopefully you'll be able to get some materials without that being a major problem, as it has been for several months now. Okay, so basically that's our Q. It starts off as an O and it becomes a Q. So the little crown over here could be, gee, a queen? Do you think that could be a queen? Golly. So hopefully I haven't. The other thing is, now this paper that I'm using is pretty hefty, but still you have to be careful when you're erasing, because you know, they're very easy to bend the paper or keep it from being flat. So Okay, so I'm going to begin. I'm going to use yellow because, I don't know, it's a queen. I don't know if queen, yellow is good for a queen. Let's take a look here, huh? And again, I want you to feel free to do what you want, because this is just an example. It's just a guide to show you what's possible. And I know that everybody has different tastes, whether that be in color or in what you want to draw. Actually, I'm really looking forward to having you in class, because I know that each one of you has your own interests in what you want to learn how to draw. And what I will be doing in our lessons in the beginning, I'll do a demonstration on something that hopefully people will want to learn. And then the rest of the time I'd like to devote to each person, because you all have different interests, and so I'd like to help each one of you with what you want. Now there's basic drawing and basic understanding, but I know that when you're interested in something, it's easier to put forth the effort. And if you're really into it, I would suggest that you try to do a little drawing every day, whether that's 15, 20 minutes. You'll find that by doing it on a daily basis, whatever it is, whether you're practicing an instrument or it doesn't matter, the bottom line is the more that you can practice on a regular basis, the more effective it is, and the more quickly you will get a handle on things. And drawing is no different than a lot of things. Anybody can learn how to draw if you really want to. I think there's been a misconception when we were growing up that, oh, you have to be born with it, to have, I don't believe that for a minute. Okay, I am going to add a brown in here just because the warmth of the brown and the yellow, I think, go very nicely together. And you may choose something different. But again, if you will think about the colors that you're going to use together, that colors that complement each other, that look good together, sometimes even if you don't know why they look good together, but if they do to you, then that's what's important. So, but using complementary colors, using the color wheel, understanding that when you mix two colors together with the primary colors on the color wheel, the color that is facing that other primary color that's left over is your complementary color. So for example, if I wanted to use a complementary color for yellow, I could have used a purple or a violet or a lavender, because those are complementary colors. Okay, so that takes care of that. And we've got some leaves up here. Kind of one of the things that leaves do, I think, in a situation like this, is that, you know, leaves are alive, and so just by seeing them, besides the color itself, it just, you know, gives life to something that's very static right here. And so in an awful lot of the contemporary manuscript books that you see that aren't biblical in nature, a lot of the contemporary things, they use a lot of nature, whether it be flowers, which we used in the cards that we made last time. It's just very, very appropriate, it just seems, that it brings life when you're using flowers and you're using... So we didn't get into flowers so much in this particular design. They just used these little circle things, and I just think that that's appropriate for a little beginning class like this, where we're using a lot of simple shapes, and there you are. So that's just a perfect example of an easy way to take a letter and expand it and add to it and embellish it with whatever you want to. So that's all for today. Thank you very much, and hope to see you soon.